No Rest for the Wicked is a mature action role-playing game with a dark narrative, clean, precise combat, and a beautiful hand-created world. Today, I want to invite you to the shores of Isola Sacra. Be careful not to get swept up in the turbulent waters of rebels, rulers, and an ancient plague corrupting the island's inhabitants into grotesque monsters. Before we start, I want to thank Private Division for sponsoring this video so that I can talk about my time playing their game. For full transparency, I was paid in exchange for this video. Everything I say here will be my honest thoughts, constructive feedback, and I aim for it to be a great source of information about No Rest for the Wicked for you. You start the game by creating your own character. This is a simple customization menu where you can choose from 2 body types and then a model preset to tweak things like hair colour, style, and a few facial sliders. To me, this is a more than adequate customization for a game where you are playing with a far-off perspective from your character. It's a game where you see more of what your character is wearing rather than what they look like individually. When you do navigate to your inventory, you get a shot of your character in enough detail to show you your customization along with your fashion. This leads me into the visual style. The character art is unique, diverse, and heavily stylized, which I really enjoyed. All of the NPCs have their own portraits and are all fully voice acted, the latter of which was especially excellent. The performances feel rich, immersive, and caricaturish in the best way possible. This is very in keeping with the game's style. The way the characters are animated and the way they move in cutscenes sometimes feel like they are hand puppets, but that is certainly not a bad thing. It actually made them feel more alive and engaging, and I praise the art team for this choice. I'm purposely not going to touch on the story in this video to encourage you to experience it for yourself. However, it's clear that this is just the first chapter of a longer, drama-filled narrative. The dialogue is also very well written and the characters feel authentic. You can interact with NPCs multiple times to get different dialogues, some of which took me off guard as either very harrowing.
You think you know the plague? Are you the one who will save us all? Have you looked into the eyes of your beloved as his face turned inside out and his eyes were pulled down into his throat?
Very humorous.
My wife Caroline runs the inn. She keeps me warm, I keep her fat. It's true love.
And sometimes a mixture of both.
I'm friendly with his widow, horrible bitch named Sigrid. Just her luck, husband runs off to join the Risen, gets turned into a monster and killed by a serum. I can't even get mine to choke to death on his supper.
The game's strongest facet is its visual appeal. It absolutely does not disappoint, and Moon Studios continues to uphold its reputation as a developer of visually stunning games. Much like their previous franchise, Ori and the Blind Forest, No Rest for the Wicked has the same high-quality lighting effects, the pale, chilling moonlight, the warm fire glow, and the ripples of water, all undercut with deep, contrasting shadows. In the starting section of the game, I actually did find it a bit too dark, but luckily the game has its own in-game brightness and contrast sliders, which improved visibility when the game was in nighttime. Speaking of which, when you finally reach the main hub, you unlock the game's internal clock, which will appear in the top right corner. Approximately 8 seconds in real time is 1 minute in-game. From what I've experienced, this day and night cycle is purely for aesthetic purposes rather than affecting events or enemy behaviour. However, that could be an interesting addition for the team to consider. But as a feature, it's a really impressive touch to make the world feel more real once again. There is also dynamic weather. It will rain, sometimes escalating to a storm with thunder and lightning. I'm not sure if this is set to occur randomly throughout the day, but it was smoothly implemented and looks and sounds fantastic. The sound design is also excellent, and here are a couple of examples of that.
Fresh blood.
Or reference, I played on PC. The game is currently only on PC at the time of this video's release, but the game has been announced for PlayStation and Xbox and will eventually come to them when the game fully releases. As in any game, getting comfortable with the controls took a little bit. There were some growing pains with the keyboard and mouse specifically. I am a PC gamer, like I said, and this game is decently adapted to the keyboard. As a downside, rebinding any of the keys is not possible at the time of this video, so if you don't like the layout, you will just have to wait for the team to implement this feature, which I believe they did confirm on Twitter they're aiming to do. However, once you get used to the controls, the game is easy to pick up and play, with a slight learning curve to master, but that is part of the challenge in these games. Combat-wise, to attack, the default input is the left mouse button, and with your other hand on the keyboard, you can move using WASD, combo with other buttons, and use items. The combat system is fast-paced and requires strategic thinking. It becomes intuitive and enjoyable with practice. What did trip me up was the mouse position specifically. Your mouse position affects where your character aims their attacks. This is not super explicit in the tutorial or even in gameplay. Sometimes my character would aim or even turn completely around when I was attacking and I would miss. Then after some testing, I discovered it was because my character was attacking relative to my mouse position and I wasn't aware of this. Here I demonstrate exactly what I mean. Once I figured this out though, I had no problems. As a point of feedback, because this game uses mouse position and input, I recommend making this more visually apparent. This game doesn't have a custom mouse graphic, and by that I mean when you launch a PC game, typically your mouse changes to a different style than the default Windows cursor, but this game doesn't, which was a little jarring. It reminded me of when you Alt-Tab out of a game to a different window or monitor because the cursor is being used elsewhere. So it is a bit immersion breaking having this bright white cursor flashing across the screen, and I know it won't be a big deal for console players who won't have that mouse issue. For this reason, players may prefer to use a console device, but if a custom cursor can be implemented, I would consider that a great fix for quality of life and immersion. Now, let's talk about the meatiest section, which is gameplay. The game describes itself as an action role-playing game, but in my opinion, that does not do it justice. It's much more about adventure, in my eyes. One facet specifically is the amount of exploration. The game heavily rewards you for exploring, going off the beaten track and looking for hidden secrets, chests, and shortcuts. You can find caves with breakable entrances or balancing puzzles to get extra loot. A lot of effort went into designing the map and layout. There are multiple ways that connect to one area. I often found myself wandering off, completely losing my bearings. Then I would drop down onto a ledge and realise that this was the area I'd started at 15 minutes ago. Areas also incorporate the vertical plane a lot. Stairs, ladders, and platforms can challenge how you approach an area or fight an enemy, which brings me to combat. No Rest for the Wicked has a soft class system, meaning you start as a blank slate and put points into whatever area you wish. You get 3 points a level, which is a little tight, but it just makes them all the more precious when you do level up. There is currently no respec mechanic, which the game could definitely benefit from, especially as everyone usually has a few dead points sunk somewhere, which they regret doing early in the game. This could also encourage players to try a new build. I was split between leveling strength and dex, and I wanted to commit to one, but I wasn't sure, and having a respec mechanic could allow me to experiment more with this. Combat is challenging yet accessible. As a player with a Souls background, I did not find the bosses too hard. They have pretty obvious tells and a fair downtime gap, and are slow moving, so you could usually just put distance between you in order to heal, but that's not to say they weren't fun. I found them enjoyable and satisfying to beat. Their soundtracks were composed nicely, they were visually horrifying and paced well throughout the story. I also enjoyed that the game allows you to fight them at whatever level you want as long as you can access their arena. I believe this is the area difficulty relative to your level, with safe being below your level, moderate on par, and dangerous being above. That flexibility is excellent if you wanted to gain more XP before facing a boss, or just beeline straight there. Funnily enough, I struggled more with the standard enemies than the bosses. I beat Warwick the Taunt, the first boss, in 2 attempts. That's not meant to be a flex at all, it is the game's first boss, meant to showcase boss mechanics, restrict you to an arena and test your preparation. but I died to this random enemy so many more times than Warwick. There is the ability to parry. I am not the biggest parrying aficionado. I will actually see how long I can get away without parrying in the games, but I gave it a try and surprisingly picked it up very quickly. There's no specific audio or visual clue to tell you when to parry. It's more so watching the enemy's wind-up animation and learning when to respond. The payoff is very satisfying. It feels very good to land a successful parry. That being said, it wasn't clear if everything could be parried. I mostly parried standard enemies, but it wasn't apparent that you could parry a boss attack. Or should I say, when I tried, I failed miserably and didn't attempt again. There's also a poise meter, which some of you may be familiar with in other games. When your poise bar completely fills up, you will be overwhelmed, fall down, and be at the mercy of your enemies. This is something that really adds to the dance of combat. It adds some challenge that both you and your enemy could be susceptible to neglecting your poise. Enemies were able to hit each other, which was a great addition. The collision and interaction between them made for some great moments. There is also a weight system. Your armour and weapons will contribute to your overall weight score: fast, normal, and heavy. This in turn determines your manoeuvrability. With a light class, your mobility move is a dash, which you can do in quick succession to compensate for your lack of armour. The middle class gets the classic roll and a happy in-between armour level, and the heavy class does get left with the fat roll, but you do unlock the ability to shoulder bash. By pressing V, you can charge with your full weight to knock your enemy off their feet, which is a cool way not to discourage players who want to make a heavily armoured character. In games with a weight system, players can often feel punished for wearing lots of heavy armour, and I like that this game allows and accommodates different playstyles. I chose to sit in the medium armour weight and enjoyed zipping in and out of combat. That being said, stamina was also a significant component of combat, specifically stamina management. If you're accustomed to other isometric RPGs, you cannot rush in and spam attack like you can in those games. I mean, you can try, but you're likely to blow your beans and end up standing in the middle of a fight with no energy to disengage. That is the biggest part of the combat learning curve, learning how much stamina you have, how long it takes to recharge, and having enough to strike, but also some to dodge out of the way. This also applies to swimming. Yes, you know how to swim in this game, and can actually touch the water without perishing instantly. However, make sure to get to land before your stamina depletes, otherwise this is a sad way to go, and totally didn't happen to me multiple times. This game definitely rewards patience and also preparation. Healing in this game is not typical. Instead of having an allotted healing flask that automatically refreshes at checkpoints, you must scavenge for food. You can cook and combine food to increase the amount of healing and provide additional benefits. This is linked to the game's crafting system, specifically cooking, but all this is to say that food doesn't get automatically replenished. If you eat it, it's gone. When you die and respawn, that food is still gone if you ate it beforehand. This definitely makes you more conservative with your heals and encourages you to explore and gather resources. I understand that some of you may think this sounds tedious, but so far I've had enough resources as I'm naturally progressing to maintain heals without having to go and search for them. I mentioned it before, but let's talk about when you die. If you die, you will be sent back to your last checkpoint, Serum Whispers. These serve as respawn points, but that's all they are. You don't full heal or replenish anything if you interact with them. They are just a means of binding your spawn. When you unlock the Sacrament Hub later in the game, you can fast travel from your last Whisper to the hub and vice versa, which is a good way of teleporting back to town to upgrade equipment, stock up on items, and then teleport back to the wilderness. Enemies don't respawn on death. They seem to have individual timers or only respawn if the area refreshes upon acceptance of new quests or changes in the world. But it did make for a pleasant experience when I died and had to retrace my steps. Not having to struggle through enemies on the run back was quite refreshing. However, the most significant penalty for dying is equipment deterioration. You will have a fair chunk of your item's durability docked when you die, providing you no benefit once it hits 0. Your options are to take them to a smith to repair, craft your own repair powders, or just replace them with other gear you find along your way. I personally didn't find the system too punishing. I changed gear a fair amount or had just enough money to keep all my items topped up. I have seen a fair amount of player criticism for this feature, saying it was too harsh, and as such, durability has been tweaked by the devs in subsequent hotfixes. And I appreciate the developers' desire to reduce any anti-fun measures. I would encourage them to keep the system as a penalty, otherwise there's no downside to dying, and there does need to be some negative incentive, in my opinion, so that you always are trying your hardest in every attempt. Another defining feature of No Rest for the Wicked is its loot system. Loot drops are completely random, with the exception of necessary quest and story items, but this does include boss drops. You can get something completely different from your friend. That includes the individual gear and weapon stats, all completely randomized. 4 rarities are currently in the game: common, rare, cursed, and unique. What I really like about No Rest for the Wicked is that your common basic items aren't considered trash. You can actually take them to the enchanter and essentially re-roll them into a higher rarity. You could get a blue rare instead, giving you positive enchantments like increased attack speed or stamina regen. Or you could get a cursed purple rarity. This is a powerful upgrade, but at a high risk. You can get some nice affixes like increased damage dealt, but there is a downside. There will be a negative effect like gold lost on death or equipment load reduced. This gives players some risk and reward when considering what to wear for a fight. Then you have unique items that are not random, but specifically handcrafted by Moon Studios to provide some of the most powerful enchantments in the game and are exclusive to that weapon. I have yet to find one of these, as they are the rarest items in the game, but I wish you good hunting finding these as well. I personally quite like the RNG aspect. It gives a fresh experience to everyone's playthrough. The randomness is unpredictable. You could get a really good start, fully kitted out in armour and weapons, or you could get absolutely nothing and go against the first boss with nothing but your bare fists. In Hotfix 1, the developers did provide the smith with an inventory to sell you weapons before the first boss if you had been so unlucky as to not find any or have any drop. Things like inventory can also be a challenge to manage. You don't just have one bag screen for your inventory, it's organised into types, which is helpful when you're trying to locate a particular item. You have a tab for gear, resources and consumables. The space you start with is relatively small, and I constantly found myself with full pockets. To expand this, you must collect something called ichor, which is dropped from hard enemies and bosses. I highly recommend upgrading your resource slot first, as you need resources to upgrade and progress in this game. I found it quite hard to carry more than 2 types of crafting material. For example, I could only carry cooking ingredients and ore from mining. If I wanted to chop down trees or fish while doing this, I would have to discard items or run all the way back to town to offload them into a chest. This was most difficult early in the game, but it got to a point where I got 2 loads of ichor pretty quickly, improving my gathering experience. Bounties added challenging unique enemies to appear in certain areas and take down for extra rewards. I did find it slightly inconvenient that I would finish the game for the day and then log back in the next day halfway through my dailies, only to realise that I would have to go back to Sacrament and re-accept them. The team may consider making this something you can accept from your quest log instead of having to backtrack to the NPC to try and make it more seamless and portable. I thought building projects were a nice way of watching the hub develop. You can contribute material to upgrade Sacrament, for example, expanding vendor inventories, unlocking new features like the inn, or even making travel around the city faster with things like elevators and bridges. My biggest criticism of the building projects is that it uses real time. For example, once you've gathered enough wood and ore, you must wait 1 hour in real time before the project is completed. I did not care for this as a feature. Granted, you can start the project and then go and do another quest, and hopefully it will be done when you return. 15 minutes for a project is fine, 1 hour is pushing it, but 4 hours is way too much. It's quite contradictory that there is an in-game clock, yet the building system does not follow that unit of time. It follows real time for some reason. The system could be improved by having the projects follow the in-game clock system, reduce the time to wait, or remove it entirely. I would rather be tasked with gathering a larger amount of resources, as that in itself takes time, than have to be aware of the passage of time in-game. But seeing Sacrament gain new buildings and new features was very rewarding. I think the NPC's menu could also be updated. He doesn't always show what has been completed, and there is no notification when a building project has finished. A UI ding or a symbol above his head would help with this visibility. You can also buy a house in Sacrament, with the choices of 3 at the time of early access. These are all different price points. I assume this is based on their map location and house layout. You can buy furniture to decorate and fit your house, giving you access to more storage and upgraded workbenches for more advanced crafting. This was a nice addition, and I hope that the team add some more decoration options and aesthetic changes to spruce up the place a bit. Because this is an early access game, the unexpected can happen for players and devs alike, and I had a fair amount of crashes when I first started playing. For reference, I have a 4090, so this was quite unexpected to have happen on a high-end PC, so I had to delay putting this video out because I couldn't talk about this game fairly, having only played a couple of hours of heavily disrupted gameplay. I tried playing immediately on early access launch, post-hotfix 1 and post-hotfix 2, and there were random crashes that occurred when I stood idle or initiated dialogue with NPC, and the most frustrating instance was during a boss battle, which I don't have to explain how annoying that is. And then I couldn't even launch the game because it would crash immediately on launch. At this point I was disappointed because I just wanted to play an otherwise very enjoyable game. But while waiting for the devs to get back to me on my issues, I eventually discovered I could play the game if I rolled back my Nvidia game drivers to an older version. This is by no means a perfect or long-term fix, but I have had a very smooth experience since doing so. This has also been aided by the recent hotfixes 3 and 4, which have targeted performance. I wanted to share this fix with any of you who have had the same issue, as it counterintuitively does say the driver is for an optimal experience playing No Rest for the Wicked, and if I can make the devs aware of this too, then we might be able to get an updated driver to help everyone play. So I'll be honest, the game did not have the smoothest of early access launches, and I didn't think it was right for me to talk about it or promote it during this time, but I can advocate that now is the time to play this game if you are interested in everything I've discussed this far. It is important to remember that early access games are not finished, some more far off from release than others, and we have seen this become more of the norm. Many developers nowadays will offer early access to their game for various reasons, and I, for one, am very pleased that developers are becoming more inviting and receptive to player feedback to shape their game. The players are the ones who will be playing the game after all. In the case of No Rest for the Wicked, they have been very upfront with their reasons for early access, how much content is available, and their roadmap for the future. I'm very intrigued about their future edition of a multiplayer mode. I think this could add a really fun and different perspective when playing with friends, and I can't wait to see how the team makes the changes to accommodate extra players in the world. Anyway, please read this information on Steam before you make any purchases to help temper your expectations. I hope you can all make an informed decision based on all the footage I've shown you as well in this video. Moon Studios definitely have a vision here, and saying that they aim to reinvent the ARPG genre is certainly a bold claim. There are influences from the greats in the genre that have clearly inspired the gameplay and format, yet there is something different. The more I play, the more I yearn for loot, for exploration, to feel that wonder and awe of discovery. The game does have something about it that makes it unique and its own. This game has boundless potential, and I thoroughly enjoyed it from what I've seen. The fact that this game was released as early access is to interact with the community. I've seen many positive interactions between the developers and the players, questions, polls, forthcomingness of information, and a lot of heart. Their releasing 4 hotfixes in a small amount of time is no small feat, working non-stop over the early access launch weekend and implementing player feedback quickly and fairly. I'm excited to see what this game holds in store. More of the characters, story, bosses, and loot. So if you'd like to experience No Rest for the Wicked itself and be a part of this upcoming game in the early access, then if you use my link below, you'll get the game for a reduced price only for the next week. This is an affiliate link for full transparency. I will earn a commission if you purchase it, and you will get money off the game. And if you buy it during this limited period, you will get the Serum Armor Set, a unique late game armor exclusive for early access players. Just use the link below in the description. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm so grateful that I can get an early look at games like this and share them with you, who I hope will be interested, and also to give my thoughts to the devs. I want to say thank you again to Private Division for being so awesome and sponsoring this video and giving me the means to dedicate my time for a complete comprehensive look at the game and to make a cosplay of the Madrigal Celine, who I hope you all enjoy as much as I did. Thank you again, everyone, and take care.